There it is. Okay, we're live, and then we're. You look different without a mask. You're way back there, and I got this, so you look like yourself. Okay, today is the 5th for purposes of the chip, and hopefully we don't have any problems. This last period it cut out somewhere along the line. We're not sure where. Okay, we're going to try to finish the chapter today. I had a couple people text me, actually 3, about how many notes should I have. Well, I've had some people turn some in already, and we're not done. I said, I don't know. The people that have already turned theirs in have done 3 to 5. One did 3 pages, one did 5. So this chapter is we spent more time on because of what we were setting, and had a lot more people involved that we had you write down, and battles, etc. So there's a few more to go. So, and with that in mind, your quote's up here. It's Latin, meaning something. I'll tell you later. All right, Liz, you have any idea? See if she knows, and then we'll move on if she doesn't. Okay, she's going to guess, and she says, what does that mean? What? Take the last word, you might get it. Eliminate, not eliminate, excuse me. Whoa. The light of something. We'll leave it at that. We'll come back. I want everybody out in La La Land to... Okay, Hannah, my other Hannah, when she sees this. That's that rat. All right. Here's a catchphrase. Victory in the year of defeat. How is that possible? Well, as the battles of the Revolutionary War go, we have a major defeat. And certain things happen. It's not looking too good. Excuse me. George Washington and what was our army called? Test question. Called the Continental Army. What second thing established the Continental Army? Second Continental Congress. Boy, that was a tough one. Okay. In the late summer, we're having some strategy and battles happening. The British back home, the king and Parliament, don't realize the strategy of warfare that is going on in the colonies. They think it's an old traditional battle where you just go in and outnumber everybody. They didn't realize, although the British soldiers that were here were finding out, they didn't realize that we were, not by design, but we were hit and run. And you saw a hint of that when the Redcoats marched into Boston, and various rioters hit them in different spots, and then they get there and they see, well, what are they fighting about? So they retreat and go back, and they get it again. Well, in the Revolutionary War, they used that tactic too, where they would sneak around. On times, people say, okay, you can only have a battle in the daytime. And you only can, you got to have breakfast and tea first. I'm being facetious, but you have this order of battle, this code. Well, it's not proper to sneak up on someone and shoot them in a battle for your independence. That's just not right. Well, the British soon found out that all up and downs, particularly from the north down down and up into Philadelphia, and you can see that on your map, that this is how the American militiamen, the Minutemen, and also called the Continental Army fought. Now, there were battles where large groups of people fought each other, but we still had the militiamen, Minutemen sneaking around doing things, and a lot of the colonists did that. Instead of joining the Continental Army, they would band for their colony or their community in their colony or their little town. And that's, as the British came in to take it over or just march through it, then they would, knock off a few of them and as they continued going on, because they couldn't stand head on. 50 people against 5,000 or whatever. It wasn't that many, but it just didn't work. So, the British way of thinking was just to overrun everybody and to kill off everybody. And one of the things that happened is George Washington and his Continental Army, and that, I believe, if it's on the bottom of, without me reading it, 65, top of 66, there's the actual picture. This is a defeat of the British, but that's kind of how a battlefield looked like. But a major defeat occurs at Valley Forge. In winter setting in. You realize they started this in late summer. And believe it or not, fighting sometimes was put on hold. Your book even makes reference to it. The Battle of Valley Forge was a defeat for us, but after we got across the Potomac River, we dug in for the winter. Made our own little fort, our own little places to hide and to protect. And the British didn't like fighting in cold weather anyway. So, but anyway, meanwhile, a very, very critical thing happens. The French. It says here, and I'll have to read this. Even before the Americans declared their independence, remember that's back in July, agents of the government of Louis XVI began to explore ways to help us, aid the colonists. Not so much because the French monarch favored the Republic or our government, because it hoped to avenge some of its defeat in the Seven-Year War and lessen the power of the British, because they did not get along. So you need to keep that in mind. They also helped supply ammunition, the essential things of war. And they were a little sneaky themselves, and they fought a lot more wars than our colonists had. But the key to changing and winning more and more battles was the French. And in their help, we probably, I'm going to say, and even in your textbook, they even hint that we would not have been successful without them. Once the British realized the French were helping us, then they realized they had to change their way of fighting. Okay, if you go to, I think it was 65, 63, if you have a chance to open your book, take a look at the battle map, and you can see some of the things that I mentioned, not very well, but up at the top where the French came from, and there was also a British group that they'd come down to join forces, and they got kind of massacred or broken up. One thing about battles, if you can get diffusion going, or you can cut through the middle of a force, and this still happens on ground forces, particularly in World War I and World War II. Vietnam was a lot different. But if you could break the ranks of, let's say we'll go with World War II, your maybe know more about it. If we could break the ranks of the Germans and get them dispersed, then we can gain some power and control. Um, Old battles were fought that way, and they seem to work. Later, afterwards, the Korean conflict and the Vietnam War changed things and how battles were fought and the strategy. So on this map, you're just going to have to take some time. Up towards the top, I'm just going to highlight. There's the first battles of the Revolutionary War up there. The Concord, Lexington, Bunker Hill. Remember, I told you to keep that in mind. And I even gave you the last battle that ended the war. A lot of things happened in between. And just for your information, Yorktown was the last major battle, the end of the Revolutionary War. You have a beginning and an ending there. But as you look at the map, it looks like, whoa, look at all that. Look at all those lines and the red and blue and what it means and who they are. But it gives you an idea how far they traveled by land, and they actually traveled by sea to get to some places. And guess what? I'm sure you can do this by just looking. Guess what was the most important places to take control of? Okay, how are you gonna survive if you don't have supplies? If you cut off the overland supplies, huh?
The rivers and waterways.
Rivers, waterways, and the ocean going from one port down, taking supplies. If you could control those, okay, you could control a group of people or an army, or you can defeat them or have a better chance. And that's the strategy. So if I ask you, what is one major strategy? It would be to control the rivers, control the ports, and the open seas of gaining access to supplies. Keep that in mind. I like to also mention, back in World War II, when the Axis powers, to defeat the Germans, many other countries eventually joined us to help us. And without this additional thing, it would have been very difficult. But things were changing, the way you fought, planes, jets, atomic bomb, all that kind of stuff. Just to say it fast. But the French, again, can't overemphasize this, was the key to American Revolutionary, and us winning it. Don't forget that. Now, on page 66, 67, I want to go to the little map on page 67 first. The Loyalist strongholds. Okay, what are Loyalists? Write that down. They were in the colonies of New York, North Carolina, South Carolina, and Georgia. Also, especially around the port cities of New York City, Wilmington, Charleston, and Savannah. Now, go right above it, and it says the Loyalist dilemma. No one knows for certain how many Americans supported the crown during the Revolution. So that tells you right there, should be able to tell you what a loyalist is. Who's the mother country? They were still loyal. So how much backstabbing and little games were being played? Let's go to today's history. How many loyalists do we have for Trump? For the incoming Biden? How many loyalists still support, without naming this cause, and this cause? You probably would be, I'm just going to make this up, I'm not. be surprised if I supported something. Let's do something really. If I supported abortions as a Christian, as a believer of faith, of allowing abortions, to allowing live births and then abort the child, that would be an extreme example. You would go nuts probably. You'd say, "Oh my, what are you even doing here, Mr. French?" I couldn't support. You'd be surprised how many people support that idea, but you never know it. They're not going to let you know it. I can remember things growing up in the 60s and 70s. If you were, you just didn't mention it. If you were a gay, lesbian, either side of the picture, oh man, So it was a hidden trait. It wasn't out in the open like it is now. So enough about that. That's an extreme example. So with that idea, it says again, no one knew in America who still supported, but they were called the Loyalist dilemma. Although a number of these had served as British office holders, they came from all ranks and sections of society. They were blended in. The wealthier exiled went to London and begged for pensions. But anyway, the Loyalists was also known as the Tories. The reason I bring this up at this moment is later in the next few chapters, you're going to see the development of how we got to our party system. Because we're one party as we win the Revolutionary War. We're not Republicans and Democrats. Not yet. And then there are factions of groups of people that organize to help with the actually writing of the Declaration of Independence, the actual following up of making the laws of the Constitution. And so you need to kind of know that. Not to abruptly end the war, but many lives were lost. But also, much of the land was destroyed. And it was done on purpose. You have to realize sometimes if we can't control the land, we can destroy it as we go through it. I can remember my father-in-law talking about in World War II, how would they take perfectly good buildings that they probably could use later, but they would blow them up and destroy them so the Germans could not use them. Because a lot of times in warfare, you take over an area and you have a pretty nice, safe building. You know, that might be your headquarters or whatever. But to do that, you can see that when they went to Savannah. What was that march called? Savannah, Georgia. Keep looking. Anyway, again, that was the way to do it in those days. So keep that in mind. I don't even know if it's on your map. Take a look. It comes into play, the same idea comes into play in the Civil War, if that helps. Okay, the general was Sherman, Sherman's march on Savannah and how to control a country in Civil War. That comes later as we fight among ourselves and what we're going to do. But that's okay. It just gives you a history of what has actually happened. And the same thing, if there was enough British loyalists or British people there, especially these port cities, that's what we did. We did what was necessary. Okay. I've had really a privileged life. I've actually been to Valley Forge. I've actually been on the Potomac. I actually stepped in the Potomac River. I've sat in the patio, so to speak, where George Washington and, I've just been there. And I didn't realize how fun and important now that I can look back on it. And it started when I was in the first grade, and it went all the way through the last major family trip. I was a junior in high school. And we had visited all these places, except for a couple trips we always drove. And Mom would take us different routes, and we got to see different things. I didn't realize. I thought it was pretty stupid. Let's just fly. We did fly once. We did take a train once, but the rest of it was all cars. And thank goodness we had relatives back there too, all through. So, get an opportunity, move, go see things. Just like the Lewis and Clark Trail right here. The Snake River. How many of you have been on the Snake? You've stood on grounds at Lewis and Clark. Been to Astoria, Oregon? The end of got to do it. Big monument there. History. You were going to say something, Nancy. What? They can't hear you. You went to Astoria? I didn't hear that. Sorry about that. Must be this. But my encouragement is all of you to go see things and experience things. Go to the mountains, go hiking on a trail. You'd be surprised. It's just satisfying. Okay, just about done here. On the last couple pages, 68 and 69, there's some information that if you missed it, the chart on page 68 shows you how the British tension was created. Sugar Act, Stamp Act, Quarterly Act. You can see those in the time frame. It's almost like the chronological time frame on page 69, 1763 down to 1783, 20-year period in our independence. What happens in short little blurps. But the thing is, winning the peace took some effort, but a delegation, the last thing, the delegation of appointed skilled people devised a peace treaty. They were Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, John Jay. Now, according to their official instructions, they were to insist only on recognition of the independence of the United States. On other issues, Congress ordered its delegates to defer to the counsel of the French government. Why would they do that? See what it says. Americans who actively supported independence saw certain things. In Paris, there were grave problems. The French had forced a military alliance with Spain and America. This is how they got to the British. American settlement at Gibraltar. Everybody know where the Gibraltar is? Entryway, Africa would be just to the south. Goes into the Mediterranean Sea. Get your geography. Well, 3 American delegates, we'll go back, publicly paid their respects to the French officials. They secretly entered into negotiation. In other words, in order for us to have complete independence, we had to have the French out of there. So these 3 individuals, again, Benjamin Franklin, John Adams, and John Jay, went to see and visited the French delegate and, the king and all that. They wanted to negotiate and make sure. Anyway, to speed this up, in order to get the French out of there a little bit, we had to concede certain lands to them. And you're going to see this in different spots and where they could live with us. And because they weren't dummies, they knew what we were trying to do. As it says, it did not fool the French for any moment. Anyway, negotiation drove a bargain and began in 1783. Not only guaranteed the independence of the United States, but also transferred all territories east of the Mississippi River, except Florida, which still remained Spanish. Okay, the French took that over. And later that's called what? When we purchase it back from the French. Remember your history at all? Wow. What'd you guys get taught in high school? I guess that's where we'll stop for now then. Concluding and preserving our independence. This is where we establish the republic. This is where we begin putting together the steps to the Constitution. Right at the end of the war. Okay. The ending of the war is officially in 1783, after the treaty is signed in September. And the British left New York. It's right there in that timeline. The very first battle was in what year? Go back to your map. Page 63. Just giving you a timing. 17, the battle at Concord. Yes, ma'am. She said 1975. No, she didn't. 1775 was the first battle with, time lapse of things going on. And the ending one was in 1783. Now, that's the official ending. I don't know. We're done here. I don't know how long it takes sometimes. World War II ended, or they gave up, and we did it. But the actual signing, or all that, took months later before it was settled. I don't know if you knew this. The Vietnam War was never declared a war by Congress. It was a military action. And this is how our veterans got, I will use the word, screwed. They didn't get their benefits and stuff for a long time. Because in order to get that, you had to have official declaration of war. And it wasn't done that way. Finally, it got settled. Okay, that's it for today. On Wednesday, you should have your notes done for this chapter. And 10 pages would be perfect. I'm kidding. Have them ready to turn in or send to me. I will have a few questions. I will post those questions. There'll be more than one and less than 10. Wonder where you heard that before. But your notes will be due Wednesday. You will be given, I will post the questions on the site like I usually do if I need to. And that's the bulletin board. Answer those. Have those ready to go Wednesday. Now, the next thing would be Friday. We'd officially be starting chapter 6, the experiment in the Republic and New Republic nation and stuff. That's it. Thank you. Oh, yep, that's enough. That's enough said. Have a great day. See you in May.